back to that breaking news that we had earlier in the hour. Police have concluded their search of 2 separate addresses in Wiltshire and London as part of an investigation launched into Lord Mandelson.
Yes, the disgraced peer is under investigation after it emerged he had allegedly leaked secret government documents and market-sensitive information to paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein.
Now, the Metropolitan Police have said that the criminal investigation is complex and will require a significant amount of further evidence gathering and analysis. They've also maintained that Lord Mandelson has not been arrested and inquiries are ongoing.
And the news coincides with mounting pressure on the Prime Minister to resign over the scandal, with Labour and Sir Keir Starmer now polling at historic lows. Well,
Labour MP Sarah Smith spoke to GB News Breakfast earlier about these concerns.
I do not believe that we need a new Prime Minister or a new leader at this time. We've got to be really, really clear in terms of Keir and his leadership and what led him to take this decision. And, you know, it's absolutely right this week that the plans are outlined for how that information will come into the public domain. But fundamentally, what's important here is that Keir has apologised. I think absolutely. I don't think there'll be many people more angry than him with how Mandelson has conducted himself.
Well, the former editor of the Sunday Express, David Wooding, joins us now. David, what's your sense over the last few days? Is this all going to sort of fizzle out into anonymous sniping briefings with Keir Starmer's loyal supporters gathering in around him? Or is this really the beginning of the end for the Prime Minister?
I think, morning, Charlie and Olivia, I think the main thing is that it's the end for Keir Starmer. It's just a matter of when. I mean, he's clearly clinging on to power at the moment. The problem is he's not. There's crises on multiple fronts. We've got the economy, we've got migrant crisis, we've got all sorts of things that need fixing. And he's going to be spending all his time trying to shore up his own premiership and dealing with rebellions that are going on in the background. And indeed, the crisis involving Peter Mandelson, because we've got all these documents which are going to come out. And that's just going to pile even more pressure on him. Then, not to mention the elections coming up in May. And in less than 3 weeks, we've got the Denton and Gorton by-election. So any defeats there are going to pile even more pressure on the Prime Minister.
David, we have heard from Gordon Brown this morning, the former Prime Minister, speaking earlier today about the situation, saying that Sir Keir Starmer risks paying a heavy price if he doesn't act quickly to clean up this situation, but did defend the Prime Minister, saying that it's not like the controversies facing other Prime Ministers who've been embroiled in other sorts of scandals, and that he needs to act quicker to sort of demonstrate his value as a Prime Minister. What do you make to what Gordon Brown has said?
Well, the big two issues for the Prime Minister here are, one, his judgment in appointing Peter Mandelson as US ambassador when he knew full well of all the links with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, and two, the fact that he's handled it so badly in the aftermath. And there's more things coming down the path on this one. So it's very difficult for him to shore things up at the moment. The problem he has also is that people are starting to feel a bit of sympathy for him. It's really a case of putting him out of his misery, because the longer he stays in there, the more he's going to see lots of more revelations coming to light, which will only make him look even more downbeat in the eyes of the public.
Of course, Keir Starmer is maintaining that he was lied to by Peter Mandelson, and so in a way this saga wasn't exactly his fault. But as you say, David Wooding, once the Prime Minister gets the sympathy of the public, that is probably curtains for them. Is there any chance that Keir Starmer could end up just standing aside, looking at him at Prime Minister's questions on Wednesday? He seemed absolutely furious, and that fury seemed to be directed at himself. He knows he made a major misjudgment in appointing Mandelson, and he knows that, as you say, this is going to take up all of the political oxygen over the next few weeks. Could he decide that enough's enough and simply step aside before perhaps he's pushed after the May elections?
Well, people who are close to Keir Starmer say that his moods are swinging between fury and deep self-doubt. And I doubt that will... I think that will mean this weekend he'll be sitting there thinking hard, probably talking to his wife Victoria about what he does next. And maybe the best way for him is to get out now, because things will only get worse for him. Angela Rayner is circling. We've got Wes Streeting, no doubt, will be looking at his options too. And Angela Rayner coming out, as you reported earlier today, to say that she warned him about it, not to mention other Labour grandees. Maurice Glassman, Lord Glassman, came out and said that he warned Morgan McSweeney, the chief of staff, about Mandelson before he was appointed. All these people are coming out saying this. And behind the scenes, while you had Sarah Smith on there saying she supports him, privately, lots of MPs are saying it's really time to look again. The problem Labour have is they don't have an oven-ready Prime Minister in the waiting. There's lots of problems with Angela Rayner. She was only Deputy Prime Minister for barely a year, and she has got her own investigation on over unpaid 40,000 tax.
Hello, I'm Bev Turner. Now, it can feel like the money in our bank accounts at the moment does not keep up with the cost of living, and maybe there's a solution. I'm here today with the CEO of TallyMoney, Cameron Parry. Cameron, what is TallyMoney?
Well, Bev, with TallyMoney, you get a current account and a debit card, but instead of pounds, you use milligrams of gold as your everyday money.
So why gold?
Gold traditionally is a great store of value. It has, on average, gone up at over 11% per annum for the last 25 years against the pound. It's tripled in value in the last decade, and in the last 2 years alone, it's increased by 50% against the pound. Banks' savings products just can't compete with that level of growth.
But this isn't just about gold. This is about a currency that you guys have created at TallyMoney. Explain it to me as though I'm an idiot.
So, look, people need to be able to hold their earnings and build their savings in a money that retains its value and remains in their legal control and remains theirs to access, away from government control.
Great. You had me at not exposed to government control.
You should feel safe and happy with your money. You should have peace of mind the more money you see in your bank balance, and that's the type of thing we're trying to deliver, and give people choice in the type of money they get to use every day.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Cameron. Thank you.
David, when we're looking at the situation that Sir Keir Starmer finds himself in, this sense of frustration, rumoured to be mulling his future, it almost makes us think about Rishi Sunak appearing to sort of rage quit as Prime Minister, saying enough is enough. He just snapped and called for that general election earlier than he needed to. Does this point us to a sense that there's a wider problem with how Britain is governed, how Sir Keir Starmer is finding it so tough to get things done, how Rishi Sunak snapped and walked away, and this is less about the people in charge and more about the system?
Yes, well, we do have a parliamentary democracy here. And of course, as we had with the Conservatives, 3 prime ministers walked into number 10 without being elected by the public. But that's the system we have. Unless we have a presidential system like the United States, then people will not be voting for the person who's in power. And rightly so. If Angela Rayner becomes prime minister in the next few months, people will rightly be saying, we need an election because we did not vote for you. The problem is that she was calling for the Conservatives to have an election when they were in the same situation. Now she will be tested on whether she would do the same herself, and she's unlikely to because there's no need for her to.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. That was David Wooding, the former editor of the Sunday Express. Charlie, I find it absolutely fascinating that David, who is so well connected, is talking about the idea of Keir Starmer mulling over his own future, experiencing real self-doubt. That's something that I haven't actually yet heard. Lots of Labour MPs wanting to get rid of him, but could he actually step aside?
Yeah, and The Guardian pointing to sort of the sense of anger he has, not only at the situation, but also at himself, making that misjudgment. Right, well, for more reaction on this, the fallout, let's speak to political communications strategist Raza Hussain, who joins us in the studio. Good morning, Raza. Thank you very much for coming in. What we've heard from David just now, the options that are open to Labour frontbenchers who are considering their own futures. Is this the right time for a Labour civil war when they're polling so poorly across the country, or do they need to stick by Sir Keir Starmer?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. And secondly, I would like to start with what Prince Edward said in Dubai, that we should remember the victims in all of this and who the victims really are. It's the women and girls who were robbed of their childhood, their lives, their happiness, the victims of Epstein. And going back to your question and the point about Mandelson, police investigations are still ongoing. They have said that it's a complex matter, so we should treat this as an allegation. Having said that, the Prime Minister does have a degree of responsibility on his hands. Yes, this appointment was pushed by Morgan McSweeney, but it says quite a lot that the Prime Minister is delegating such a huge appointment, the UK's ambassador to Washington, to the most important country, to the most important ally, to a member of staff, to his advisor, rather than calling the shots himself. Why couldn't we stick to the previous ambassador who had built a very constructive relationship with Republicans, with officials from the White House? And it really goes back to the Prime Minister's table. Why did he listen to his advisor? And I'm somewhat fed up that Labour MPs are calling for the resignation of Morgan McSweeney. Advisors advise, ministers decide. It's very much up to the Prime Minister to have made a better decision on appointing the right person, so we could have had a better relationship with the Trump White House.
So I think you're right. I mean, the buck obviously does stop with the Prime Minister. But do you think what's going on here, this is the sense that I get, Labour MPs are directing their anger at Morgan McSweeney because they're quite scared of a Labour leadership election. There isn't really anyone waiting in the wings. Let's talk about Wes Streeting, who's obviously a very good communicator, but he's implicated in all the Lord Mandelson scandal as well. Then you've got Angela Rayner, who's being investigated for her tax affairs. Do you think Labour MPs, whatever they might say, are actually a little bit scared of the idea of deposing Keir Starmer?
There's a sense that the PLP is stuck with the Prime Minister. As you said earlier, the HMRC investigation is still ongoing into Angela Rayner's tax affairs. No wrongdoing has been confirmed yet, but it just doesn't look right when he came into power promising to clean up politics, that you've got people with question marks on their track record. You have got to, so that's number one. Secondly, the Prime Minister is in a tough position, and the longer the investigation goes on, the worse it will be for him, because there will be further questions of what he knew and what he didn't know. And there are so many things. For example, the FT already had a report of the kind of relationship the disgraced peer allegedly had with the paedophile, and very much goes back to the PLP being stuck with Keir Starmer because Wes Streeting was a protege of Mandelson. Angela Rayner can't really do anything right now. Even though she wishes she could do something. And I think the only person that's left who's sort of like clean in the mix is Ed Miliband. And again, it would be pushed to the left of the party. It's not the right person to have in charge of our economy. So it's a conundrum for the Labour Party.
Raza, describe yourself as a sort of political communications guru. I've seen you refer to that in Politico, for example, the website. I think you previously worked for Gina Miller, right, on her start-up party. Didn't work out too well. But what's your communication strategy for Sir Keir Starmer then? In that guru role, what would you say to him right now? What should he say to deal with this problem?
I would say he should take a 2-week break, go off, switch his phone off, and understand what he actually wants to do with the country. It almost seems he's delegating everything that's important, whether that comes to the economy, appointing an ambassador, to his inferiors in Downing Street. He really needs to understand what he stands for, what he wants to take back to the country by the time the next general election comes around. If I were working Downing Street, I really wouldn't know how to represent the Prime Minister if a press officer, or let's say you guys called me up and asked me a question about his policy. I really wouldn't know. And it's pretty much because he doesn't really stand for anything. And if he don't stand for anything, he fought for everything. And it infuriates me because Downing Street, the government departments, have hundreds of press officers, communication strategists, and yet they can't get simple things right. And it just makes me really angry.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Raza Hussain, and giving us your insight there.